pilot. There are few professions where a person carries more responsibility than here, and yet, in the history of aviation, there have been pilots who committed unbelievably irresponsible acts. That's precisely why in this video, we're going to present the most shocking actions of real pilots. Included are outrageous mistakes, unimaginable crimes, as well as heroic rescue actions that prove some pilots are truly heroes of the skies. Let's start with a female pilot from American airline United Airlines, who in 2017 behaved so inappropriately that she frightened some of her passengers. So what happened? After the flight from Texas to Washington was delayed for over 2 hours due to mechanical problems, the pilot showed up not in uniform, but in her casual clothes. And that wasn't all. Over the intercom, she began talking about hate. She first said, passive-aggressively, that if anyone had a problem with her clothes, then the passengers would have to wait another 10 minutes until she changed. Then she started talking about her divorce and insulting various people, including a mixed-race couple. Gradually, passengers began to stand up and leave the aircraft. Later, many passengers wrote on social media that it was clear to them the pilot had psychological issues and was not in a condition to safely fly the aircraft. Indeed, the same was noted by the crew, resulting in another pilot taking over the flight. The airline refunded those passengers who had exited the plane after the humiliating incident. We continue with a truly unbelievable story that cost the lives of 75 people, all because one single pilot wanted to impress his family. What happened? On March 22, 1994, Aeroflot Flight 593 was scheduled to fly from Moscow to Hong Kong. The pilot was Yaroslav Kudrynsky, who had thousands of hours of experience. He had been trained on Russian aircraft, but had also flown the Airbus A310, the aircraft used on that night. At first, everything was going smoothly. The Airbus was flying steadily, the cabin was dark, and the passengers were asleep. Then Kudrynsky made one of the most foolish decisions in aviation history. He invited his 2 children, his 15-year-old son and 13-year-old daughter, into the cockpit to give them an unforgettable experience. And not just that, he allowed his son to sit in the pilot's seat and play with the controls. Because he was accustomed to Russian aircraft, he believed the autopilot would continue to fly. But this was a fatal mistake. His son, without realizing it, deactivated part of the autopilot, which interpreted the manual input as human intervention without giving an audio warning. The aircraft began to tilt, at first slightly, then dramatically. Suddenly, it entered an uncontrollable 90-degree spin and began to plummet toward the ground. Kudrynsky tried to intervene, but it was too late as the aircraft spun uncontrollably in the dark. In less than 5 minutes, Flight 593 crashed into the ground at nearly 750 kilometers per hour. No one survived. All of this was because of a reckless moment of fatherly enthusiasm. The following situation on our list shows that the job of a pilot involves much more than just flying an aircraft. This is exactly what a pilot experienced on a flight to Charlotte, North Carolina. A seemingly drunk passenger stood up immediately after landing and tried to disembark, even though the plane had not yet reached the gate and everyone was supposed to remain seated. Despite a flight attendant ordering him to sit down, he proceeded toward the exit, where the flight attendant blocked his way. Then both pilots intervened, politely but firmly telling him to return to his seat. But the passenger continued causing trouble. When he began to make violent threats, the pilot acted immediately.
Take a seat. I said take a seat, sir. I don't care what you want to do. You're going to take a seat right now.
He pinned him to the ground, turned him face down, held him down, and shouted at him. On social media, many praised the pilot for his decisive intervention. The most dangerous thing a pilot can do is overestimate their abilities and try to impress others. That's precisely the mistake amateur pilot Shad Field made in 2023. As a close friend of the famous influencer family Mikesell, he offered to take them on a flight in a small aircraft over one of the most spectacular landscapes in the US, the Uinta Mountains in Utah. The family was filming the day trip, and along with the pilot and his wife, the 4 of them boarded a small Cessna At first, everything was fine, but even before takeoff, the pilot had made some critical mistakes. He hadn't calculated the passenger weight properly. He had overfilled the fuel tank, making the aircraft heavier than it should have been. On the return trip, flying over a canyon, he made his next mistake, flying too low and too slow so that the passengers could get a better view. The problem was that the plane had very little lift, one of the first things a pilot learns in training. At that moment, the aircraft, with 6 people on board, was directly above a lake and at risk of falling into the water. But then, Shadfield made a wise decision. He raised the landing gear. Why? To reduce air resistance and, with some luck, glide over the lake. And indeed, he managed it, but the aircraft continued to lose altitude. Eventually, a crash was unavoidable and the plane went down in a large field near the lake. Miraculously, all the passengers survived, though the pilot and another passenger were seriously injured. Shadfield later explained in an Instagram live stream how the accident happened and claimed he didn't think he had done anything wrong. However, many experts analysed the incident and came to a different conclusion. The next pilot on our list temporarily deserved a completely different title during a fateful flight in 2024. Midwife. On a Vietjet flight from Taipei to Bangkok, pilot Sarin Rexall suddenly became the assistant in a childbirth. A passenger went into premature labour at 10,000 metres above the ground. Without hesitation, the experienced pilot handed over control to the co-pilot and rushed to help. In the cramped airplane bathroom, a makeshift delivery room was set up. Fortunately, there were also passengers on board with medical training, and together they managed to deliver a healthy baby high above the clouds. The baby was fittingly nicknamed Sky. Sarin Rexall later proudly posted a photo with the newborn. It was the first landing of this kind in his 18-year career. Now we reach one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in aviation history. One you've undoubtedly heard of, but it couldn't be left out of a video like this. It remains to this day a grim reminder. On March 24, 2015, Germanwings Flight 9525 departed normally from Barcelona, bound for Düsseldorf. But what the 144 passengers and 6 crew members didn't know was that one of them had dark intentions and was sitting in the cockpit. The co-pilot, Andreas Lubitz, had devised a diabolical plan. When the captain briefly exited the cockpit, Lubitz locked the door and barricaded himself inside. What followed was unthinkable. Lubitz put the aircraft into a steady descent, directing it straight toward the French Alps. Despite the desperate efforts of the captain to open the cockpit door, it remained locked, secured by a safety system designed to prevent terrorist attacks. Even air traffic controllers who noticed the altitude drop tried frantically to contact the aircraft, but never received a response. Minutes later, the Airbus A320 crashed into a mountainside. No one survived. The investigation later revealed that Lubitz suffered from severe psychological issues, which he had hidden from the airline. A memorial in Le Vernet today honours the 150 people who lost their lives that day. And finally, quite literally, comes something turbulent. In May 2022, an incident at the Sassovo Civil Aviation School in the Ryazan region of Russia sparked international outrage. A 28-year-old married flight instructor was caught in the act having sexual intercourse with his 21-year-old student inside a Cessna 172 aircraft and during the flight. The worst part, it was recorded on video and later posted online. As expected, both were immediately expelled from the school. It was later revealed that the instructor had seduced the student by promising free flying lessons. A scandal that shows turbulence in the cockpit isn't always about the weather. Write in the comments which of these stories shocked you the most. See you next time.